this video, we're going to talk about getting started with Microsoft Flight Simulator. A lot of our how-to videos are advanced topics, and you may not get as much out of our videos if maybe you don't have a clear understanding of how Microsoft Flight Simulator works. This is just an overview so that you can create your own flight plans and get the results that you expect. If you've just opened Flight Simulator for the first time, this is the screen you're going to come to when you first open Flight Simulator. You can just go straight to your activities, and they've got discovery flights where you can just spawn in some scenic place and fly around for a while and just hit escape when you're done. There's flight training, which is advisable. If you can manage to fly the Cessna 152, you should be able to fly most of the propeller aircraft. Landing challenges are a good way to practice your landings on selected runways around the world. And then the bush trips, where there are multiple leg sightseeing flights all around the world, again with the predefined aircraft. You can explore those yourself, but eventually you're probably going to want to just fly where you want to fly and see what you want to see. So that's really what this video is about. When you first get Flight Simulator, you need to bear in mind that it is a flight simulator. Most games, Ace Combat 25 or whatever they're up to right now, you might be the best kid on the block in the game and you can't get the Cessna 152 off the ground. Well, those games have a lot of automation built in. They're basically just maybe some limited rudder control and your aileron and power control, and then the game handles a lot for you. Flight Simulator is a real world environment, so weather and wind and moisture and icing and all those things exist as they do in the real world, as well as the true flight characteristics of the actual aircraft that you're flying. Now you can control that in your options under the assistance options. You can set things like auto mixture for aircraft that need the fuel mixture adjusted based on altitude. Unlimited fuel, so you don't even have to worry about your fuel tanks. Turn on all your damage. You can turn off icing, and so on and so forth. You can also set things like the landing path on, so that as you approach a runway, you actually have the path pictured in the sky. You can also turn on points of interest for landmarks and airports and so on and so forth, and display the directions. So that'll allow you to eliminate some of the navigation if you just want to follow in-game prompts directly to push pins. You can use your markers and your smart cam mode to find points of interest in flight. And then don't forget to save. The other thing to be aware of is your general options. Under data, you can turn on and off your photogrammetry and real-world graphics to minimize bandwidth, but basically you're just flying practically a wireframe at that point. You can turn on and off live traffic and weather and multiplayer. Now, the reason I mention multiplayer in particular is if you're going to be practicing landings, for example, there may be other people wanting to use that airport that are actually using air traffic control and have clearance to use that runway while you're practicing. So turn off multiplayer. Ultimately, you're going to want to fly where you want to fly and find what you want to find, and that's going to be in World Map. Starting at the top, you're going to want to select your aircraft. Now, if you look under your profile, you can look in your hangar, and all aircraft that came with whatever version of the game you bought and any aircraft that you've bought on the marketplace will be in your hangar. But the reason I mention the aircraft hangar, if you're going to just pick to fly to Everest, for example, well, the max altitude of this aircraft is 14,000 feet. So I'm not going to make it to the peak of Everest in this aircraft. I'm going to have to pick something else. And you have all of the specs, but the important ones are going to be your cruise speed and your maximum altitude. It's one of the things you just need to be aware of when you're deciding where you want to fly and what you want to fly. I've selected my Cub Crafters NX Cub, which is one of the standard aircraft. I could change it here, so if I end up deciding to take off and land in a lake, I'm going to want to pick something with floats. And then you've got the whole world to choose from. Let's make it daylight in Europe. And let's go somewhere where there's probably a lot of points of interest. Frankfurt, Stuttgart. Frankfurt will do. We couldn't possibly ask for more points of interest than that. It selected my departure. I haven't chosen an arrival yet, and it automatically selected a default runway. I can zoom in and select my own runway, so I'm going to be flying towards Frankfurt, so maybe I want this runway. I can also set my flight conditions. This is going to be weather, time of day, whether it's day or night, and you can fly live conditions. I'm going to fly clear skies. And then you can include AI air traffic. Remember, I turned off my live traffic and live weather. You've got to go back to your options and turn these on if you want to use them. And I'll use a preset of clear skies, and it's 9:42 a.m. local time, so that ought to be beautiful. I can select an arrival runway if I want to actually fly a route. Let's say we're going to come right back to Frankfurt. I'm using the ICAO code, which is the international code. The first letter indicates the region, and then the airport code itself. I'm just entering EDDF. It found it for me. It sets it as my arrival. It picks a runway. I can also choose an IFR flight plan. This is a getting started video, so I'm not going to talk about that, but this is where it is. And click fly. Flight Simulator has spawned me right on the hold short of the runway. It's showing me at hold short, but when we get ready to fly, it'll drop me on the runway. So I'm ready to go. I don't even have to taxi. Okay, and I'm ready to take off. Before we do, let me turn on our points of interest. I don't remember if I left it on. Let's just turn on our landmark markers. We'll turn on the airport markers as well. In this case, I have a glass cockpit. It's picking up my flight plan, but my flight plan basically only consists of the airport. So it's saying my next waypoint is EDDF. It shows my flight path, I guess, as leaving and coming right back. Okay, and I'll show you how to do a flight plan to where you want to go in a minute. On the horizon here, we can see all those points of interest. In Frankfurt, we can just follow the push pins in the sky. By the way, if any of this is helpful, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Let's go to that first marker off our nose there. I don't know what the VFR map will show. It doesn't show the points of interest. It does show the airports, of course. And we also have a nav log, which probably won't show anything either other than the one airport. It's starting to tell us that Deutsche Bank Park is 2.5-ish miles away. And there's Deutsche Bank Park. And if you remember, I turned my smart cam to auto. So I think if I hit my smart cam, it will automatically look at the site for me. And I think there's even an achievement for flying within 500 feet of a point of interest. Judging by Frankfurt, you could go a long way to your achievement right here. That's actually pretty cool. Okay, and there's a bunch more, and you could just explore them. Or we can set a flight plan for what we want to see in particular, and then follow our flight plan. Frankfurt looks like pretty good pickings. Let's go ahead and save this flight plan. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it, so I'll just save it as the ICAO code. So then what I can do is open up Flightplan. Now you can download this from simflightplan.com/flightplan. And when it initially opens up, you'll get a welcome message and it'll download whatever the featured download is off the website. Now I could turn around and load this flight plan directly into Flight Simulator and start flying Southeast England. Or we can go ahead and open up the flight plan we just saved from the cockpit. And now we're in Frankfurt and it's dropped push pins on the airport. What we want to do is give ourselves a flight plan to the interesting sites that we saw. So the first one was right off the runway. Deutsche Bank Park is right here. So we know that's worth seeing. So we'll just drop a pin on Deutsche Bank Park, and we could give it a name, except I want to make sure I spell that correctly. And I'll give it a POI, point of interest number. That's typically how they show up in bush trips. One thing to keep in mind about waypoint numbers, they really don't matter, but if it's a user type waypoint, it could be a user or an airport. If you open the flight plan in a Garmin cockpit, it's going to automatically rename your waypoints to USR 010203. So if you plan to fly the Cessna or something with the Garmin and you want to match up to what it's going to end up renaming your waypoints to, use USR prefix. It looked like there were some other things in Frankfurt proper. We can use our satellite and the push pins on the map to look for things that might be interesting to see from the air. For example, let's take a look at the Science Center here. I'm sure many of these are points of interest in Flight Simulator. You'll notice as I zoomed in to a certain point, it actually tilted the map for me. So that's a Google feature, but you can also rotate the view with the tilt option. We'll just drop a pin here as an example. Now we have a flight plan that leaves the airport, goes to Deutsche Bank, goes to the Science Center, and then returns to Frankfurt Airport. But we know there's a lot more points of interest around here in Flight Simulator, and there may actually be other interesting things to find on the Google map using Peggy, for example, or I think it's actually called Pegman. You can actually use Google Maps photogrammetry. We'll decide as we fly it whether we want to put the points of interest on our flight plan or not as we fly. So what I'm going to do is just save what I have. Oh, and this is supposed to be a getting started video, so I'm supposed to keep it simple. But one thing that might be worth pointing out is you have a first flight state field in the flight settings. I'm going to set that to flight cruise, and it's already got me at an altitude of 842 feet. So if I save this flight plan with flight cruise, I can go back into my cockpit, load that flight plan I just modified. It spawned me exactly at the position with exactly the bank and heading I had when I saved my flight plan. I can pick up where I left off, and I'll have a Google map to help me. Plus I have push pins to guide me to my next waypoint. I'll have to turn off my autopilot because in this particular aircraft it has an autopilot, so it's going to start in autopilot. That's a run-of-the-mill suspension bridge. I mean, I don't know that there's anything special in particular about it. Nothing personal to the people of Frankfurt. So maybe what we can do, we'll skip that bridge and we'll just drop a pin for this next one. And I'm not going to name it at this point. I'm a little busy. But then we could just call this like the bridge section. Some of these are pretty interesting. So this is a whole bridge run, I guess, if you're into bridges. There's our tower, and my smart cam worked for me that time. So we'll drop a pin here, and I guess we'll do one more point of interest here. Oh, the incineration plant. They really did go into detail in Frankfurt. Oh, it's got a cool snake on the, or a dragon on the smokestack. You just drop a pin behind your aircraft as you fly. We can come back and find it later. Oh, this is a good point to also use active pause. So if you're not familiar, you can pause in flight and take a minute to look at what's on the map, or you can actually use drone mode. I have mine set as the delete key, but I don't remember if that's the default button for drone mode. But there we are. There's our incineration plant and our tower off in the distance. And we had just dropped our pin for the incineration plant. Sometimes if you click directly on one of the push pins, it'll give you more of a description and you can view it on Google Maps, which in this case is pretty much the same information we're seeing on the in-flight map, but sometimes there's a little more information. For historical places, there's a little description underneath. But if you wanted to search for something nearby, this is pretty handy. Google Maps has your location where you're flying. It thinks you're physically here. And also, when I loaded this flight plan, it only had from here to Deutsche Bank and back again. We've added the rest of these push pins in flight, so that's why my VFR doesn't match anymore. But when I first started flying, it would match. It should match up to what's in the glass cockpit. Our glass cockpit already has us heading back to EDDF because we've been adding waypoints along the way. But it had the point of interest 1 and 2 when we loaded the flight plan. But now we've completely changed our flight plan. We've added a bunch of points, some of which I haven't named. Before we clean up our new flight plan, if you're going to want to share this, you might want to take a screenshot. I've always used the snipping tool, but let's go ahead and give snip and sketch a try, which is what Windows has been trying to get us to use. So that'll be our screenshot. Let's go ahead and back out of Flight Simulator and we'll wrap it up. I'm going to go back to my flight plan and we're at the main menu, so it dropped me back at the equator. The default position at the main menu is on the prime meridian at the equator. So I turned off my GPS follow and then I'm going to pick EDDF, which was Frankfurt, and Flight Simulator didn't give me a name for it, and I'm going to give this a name. I like to use the from and to iCal codes if available in my description, but there's nothing special about that. You can do what you want. We'll stick with the same aircraft, although we could change it to any of the standard aircraft, or in fact any aircraft I own. I just may need to type in the name of the aircraft. See our other videos for other ways to cut and paste the aircraft name in there. First thing we should do is untangle it, although it's not that bad. We just want this waypoint directly after this waypoint, so we just need to take that last point and move it up in the flight plan so we get to it sooner. And now we've got one that makes sense. When I saved this, I was in flight and I had told it I wanted to spawn in flight. I think we were out here somewhere or somewhere near Deutsche Bank Park. Well, next time I fly it, I don't want to do that. I want to start off on my runway again and fly to each point of interest and see what's there. Or maybe I want to share it with my friends. Just take your first push pin and place it where you want to spawn. So this is my starting push pin. I'm going to drop myself here at the end of the runway. And it's going to ask me, do I want to move that point? That's just basically a prompt in case you accidentally move one in flight. That gives you a chance to say no and let it put it back where it started. EDDF is an airport, so it's saying, hey, are you sure you want to move an airport? In this case, I do. And then it gives me another choice. It says, do you want the aircraft placed at this position in Flight Simulator? So yes. That's a quick way to choose your spawn position. And if you've set a runway number, you don't have to even set your heading. It's going to take off on runway 7 left, which was a part of our flight plan. If you remember, I saved in flight with a particular point in space, but now I just want to be on the ground on flight runway. And if you remember, I was kind of careless about just dropping my pins in flight. I didn't really pay much attention to where they were. I was just dropping them in the general vicinity of my aircraft. Now I'm actually going to give them a name. And the Science Center I did name. This was our tower. Placing my pin in satellite mode like that is not going to be exactly accurate. You'll see the center of the tower is actually here because the satellite imagery is coming from a satellite that's closer to the equator. When you look at the satellite view, it's a bit skewed. So if you're picky about where your pin ends up, you'll want to set it in map mode, and you can turn off terrain to actually see the building footprints. And then the last one was an oddball. It was an incinerator, but it did have a really cool dragon on the smokestack. See, is the dragon in the imagery? Oh yeah, there's the dragon on their smokestack. Okay, I guess that was a pretty good reason, but it's definitely worth a flyby. We already have a waypoint for it. I just need to move it over here. And I guess this is the actual name of the company, but we'll go ahead and stick with what it was in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And then the last thing I usually do is rename my waypoints so they're consecutive. It doesn't matter. You can have duplicate airport waypoint numbers, but your user waypoints have to be unique. If I was to try to rename this one to POI2, it's going to complain that POI2 already exists. See, our science center, I think, was right on top of the building. It is. We fixed our tower, we fixed our incinerator plant, give Frankfurt Airport a name. We've given it a title and a description. I could have reselected my aircraft, but I didn't. I've cleaned up all my descriptions. So when I get ready to renumber them, usually what I'll do is I'll count my waypoints. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know that one's going to be 5. And now if I just go backwards from there, it's a little easier. You're less likely to run across a duplicate. Now I'm actually going to have a problem because I used POI03, but I'll just do 03 and just put X or something on the end until you rename the previous one. And now I've got nice, neat, consecutive waypoint numbers. You can also, as I mentioned earlier, use USR as the prefix if you plan to use an aircraft with a Garmin cockpit. I think all the Cessnas, the Pilotus, number of the aircraft have Garmin cockpits. So when I'm all done making changes, I'll save it one last time, and then I can share my flight plan. I can post it under my own username. Hi folks, I'm TextDan. I can include the list of waypoints and descriptions, which I would typically want to do. I can include additional summary text. And we'll include a featured image. I guess while I was talking, I must have closed Snip and Sketch. I don't know what happened to Snip and Sketch, but I'll just use an image I prepared earlier. Or if you don't include an image, it'll just use the flight plan default image. If you're going to share an image, please make sure it's under 2 meg, that it won't allow you to save anything larger. I usually just crop them to 1024 wide, and that seems to make the file small enough. Now, if we look on our downloads page, the Frankfurt tour is available with the landmarks that we selected. And as you saw, there's lots more to see. Register for a free account. SimFlightPlan does not share your data or sell your data with any third party. Feel free to download this flight plan and add a bunch more points of interest. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.